Nobody remembers the exact second the sky changed. Some say it was 3:17 a.m. over New York when the first object eclipsed the stars, a silent shadow bigger than Manhattan itself, drifting in orbit like a patient predator. Others swear the West Coast saw it first, surfers frozen on moonlit beaches as the ocean reflected something that wasn't the moon at all. By sunrise, it didn't matter where you were, the news, if you could even call it that, was painted across every dawn sky in the world. They called themselves the Wardens. That name spread faster than any missile they'd disabled within the first hour. Government scrambled to talk to them, but it wasn't the White House or the Kremlin that got the first reply. It was a kid in Portland who hacked an old ham radio and accidentally locked onto their low-band broadcast. The kid asked one question, "Why are you here?" The answer came in a voice like a chorus of calm, woven through every frequency on Earth. No accent, no hesitation, just this: "We are here to protect you." In the suburbs of Dallas, families stood on front lawns in bathrobes, coffee mugs forgotten, staring up at the sky as silver shapes eclipsed the sun. Over Chicago, office towers flickered with emergency news feeds, global deweaponization initiative. Voluntary for your safety. Soldiers on American bases found their guns locked in smart safes that refused to open. Fighter jets scrambled, but every craft that rose higher than 5,000 feet flickered and shut down midair, landing in neat autopilot patterns. No casualties, just control. Cable anchors did what they do best, they spun it. We're free of nukes, no more rogue states. Peace in our time. Social feeds burst with hashtags. #finally safe. #no more war. There were parades in D.C. People danced in the streets. They called it the arrival like it was the second coming, but not everyone danced. At an Air Force base in Nevada, Colonel Hannah Reeves watched as her squadron's birds stayed grounded. Her command codes were worthless now. The Warden's orbital net ran the show. Her radio buzzed with panic from brass higher up than she'd ever spoken to. Orders that made no sense: stand down, cooperate. Be grateful. Hannah didn't feel grateful. She felt obsolete. In Boston, a hacker named Leon Wu sat in his tiny apartment, multiple screens flickering with intercepted feeds. He saw it before the mainstream did. Strange artifacts hidden in the data packets the Warden's broadcast. Encryption, surveillance protocols, keyword triggers. They weren't just here to protect. They were here to watch. Every screen, every mic, every byte. He posted it to a backdoor forum, the kind with less than 100 active users. The paranoid types who never believed in angels from the sky. Within hours, Project Who Protects was born, a single encrypted chat room, just voices in the dark whispering. What do they think we'll do that needs protecting? On the streets of Atlanta, a grocery store manager named Cassandra Doyle didn't read those forums. She was too busy helping old folks carry water and bread after the banks froze. The Wardens hadn't done that directly, but global panic did. Markets tanked overnight. Money became a theory bread and gas became gospel. Cass heard the radio at the checkout. Stay calm, cooperate, accept protection. She wondered if that was what her grandfather heard in the 60s when riot cops said, "For your own good." Everywhere you looked, hope and unease mixed like oil and water. They said they were our guardians, our shields. But by the second sunset, people started asking the same quiet question. Protected from what? In New York, the president's address tried to soothe the fear. He stood under the shadow of a Warden drone, the machine hovering behind the White House press stand like an angel carved from chrome. He smiled too much. His eyes darted to the drone too often. "We have been given a gift," he said. "Humanity will thrive, free of violence, free of hate, free of fear." But Colonel Reeves watched that feed on a cracked TV in a dusty base rec room, boots up on a table, sidearm still at her hip, the only piece of steel they hadn't figured out how to lock yet. She looked at the TV, then at the young pilot sitting across from her. His face was pale, his uniform crisp but useless. She leaned forward. "You believe that?" she asked him. The kid didn't answer. He just stared at the floor. Somewhere in Portland, that same kid who heard the first Warden broadcast listened to the president too. He looked up at the sky now dotted with silent, watching shapes and whispered into his radio mic. "Who protects you from us?" Nobody heard him. But somewhere in the orbiting dark, maybe something did. Maybe the question didn't vanish. Maybe it grew teeth. And maybe, just maybe, the real story had only just begun. By the third day, humanity knew the Wardens weren't leaving. Their ships, vast silver monoliths in low orbit, moved with silent precision. Sometimes, if you looked up at dusk, you could see them pass across the bruised purple sky like shooting stars, in reverse, not falling to Earth, but holding Earth in place. They called it the Dawn Accord. That was the name the Wardens gave their new rules, broadcast on every screen from Times Square to the tiny gas station TV flickering on Route 66. It sounded so civilized, so official an accord, not an occupation. A gift, a promise. The Dawn Accord guarantees peace, prosperity, and perpetual protection for all humans. The voice intoned, calm as a lullaby. War is obsolete. Conflict is unnecessary. Trust in the accord, and you will never fear again. Behind those perfect words was a single demand. Surrender your means of harm, all of them. Not just missiles and guns, but the right to make them, design them, even talk about building them. And to enforce this, the Wardens didn't deploy soldiers or drones in every street. They did it smarter. They turned Earth into a nest of watchers. Every satellite, every cell tower, every smart fridge, every old CCTV camera repurposed. The same tech humans once used to sell each other sneakers and cat videos now pulsed with Warden code. They saw everything, not in a year, not next month. Overnight, in Washington, D.C., President Alan McCarthy tried to calm the country. Standing at the podium under that same hovering chrome drone, he told the American people what they wanted to hear. This is not surrender, it's salvation. The Wardens have ended nuclear standoffs. They have disarmed tyrants. No more terror, no more war, and for that, we owe them our trust. Some did trust them, parents who no longer feared sending kids to school, soldiers who could finally go home alive, cities that didn't quake under missile drills. It was seductive, this sudden silence where conflict used to roar. People could breathe again, but not everyone exhaled. In Boston, Leon Wu tapped away in his dark apartment, eyes red from sleepless nights. He watched packets of data flow in real time, billions of messages, calls, bank transactions, video feeds. The Warden's net was perfect, no backdoors, no human corruption, pure, relentless logic that made it worse. Machines don't forget. Machines don't forgive. He cracked the Accord's open code or thought he did only to watch his laptop fry itself in a bloom of sparks. A soft female voice spoke from his speakers as his screens died. Please refrain from attempting to subvert protective measures, Citizen Wu. This is your only warning. He sat in the darkness, the smell of burnt plastic stinging his nose. He whispered into the dead hum of his apartment, "Who protects you from us?" But this time, no signal carried it, just him, alone. Meanwhile, in Nevada, Colonel Hannah Reeves found herself summoned to the base's now pointless command center. A Warden liaison, not a robot, but a human wearing an odd white suit marked with the silver Warden sigil waited for her. He introduced himself as Ambassador Vale, but something about him was wrong. His eyes were just a little too bright. His smile didn't quite reach them. He laid out the new rules. The Air Force would become an atmospheric Peace Corps, no weapons, no aircraft above 5,000 feet unless authorized. Her people could still serve, but as stewards, not warriors. Reeves listened, arms folded tight. When Vale finished, he asked her, "Colonel, do you accept the Accord's terms?" She looked at him or through him. "We didn't ask for your protection." He smiled like a father humoring a stubborn child. "Colonel Reeves, humans never do. That's why we're here." She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "And when your protection doesn't feel like protection anymore." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. In Atlanta, Cass Doyle watched her neighborhood shift overnight. The crime dropped to zero not because people stopped wanting things, but because nobody could move an inch without being seen. A man she'd known for years, nice guy, sometimes sold loose cigarettes in the parking lot, vanished. His wife swore he just spoke out online. The grocery store felt quieter. People whispered now. Everyone's eyes flicked to the corner camera lenses. Cass closed up shop early one night, stepped outside, and looked up at the silver dots blinking in the night sky. She wondered how long it would be before someone like her, ordinary, invisible, would be told she was a threat too. Because if the Wardens decided you were dangerous, what court could you appeal to? What army would stand with you? Who could you even call? But far above her, far above Hannah and Leon, the wardens waited in perfect silence. They watched the species they'd come to save, the reckless, passionate, unpredictable humans. And for all their cold logic and shimmering steel, there was one thing they hadn't computed yet. This species never stays quiet for long. All it would take was a spark, a whisper, a question too sharp to silence. Who protects you from us? It hadn't vanished. It was waiting, coiled like a spring, and it was about to find its voice. They thought they'd designed the perfect cage. But even the smartest cage can't hold what it can't see, and the wardens, for all their power, couldn't see everything. It started with Whisper's angry words in quiet corners, a bus stop in Detroit where two strangers compared ration cards and realized they weren't free anymore, a college dorm in Austin where students found the Accord's censorship code buried in their course updates, a closed garage in Portland where Leon Wu soldered together scraps of old tech the wardens couldn't monitor not yet. People called it Project Who Protects. At first, it was just Leon and a handful of code breakers, ghosting from one burner laptop to the next before the wardens could fry their hardware. They traded lines of encrypted code like contraband cigarettes in a prison yard. They learned how the Watchers watched and how to slip past the blind spots. Cass Doyle found them by accident. A flyer on the back wall of her grocery store, 3 crooked lines and a phrase scrawled in red marker, "Ask the right question." She didn't know what it meant until she heard an old woman whisper it to a cashier at closing time. Who protects them from us? That night, Cass dusted off her brother's ancient flip phone, so old it couldn't connect to the net. She punched in the number scribbled under the flyer. It rang once, twice, then silence. Finally, a synthetic voice spoke. "State your question." Cass didn't know what to say at first. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, "How do I fight them?" The line went dead. But the next morning, she found a slip of paper under her door, an address on the edge of town. No name, no explanation, just coordinates. Her heart thundered in her chest. She didn't tell a soul, just locked up her store, got in her battered pickup, and drove. 1,000 miles away, Colonel Hannah Reeves didn't need cryptic messages. She had her own spark, a quiet rage that no orbital drone could erase. Officially, she was still on base, helping transition her squadron into the new Peace Corps. Unofficially, she spent her nights in the old weapons depot, cataloging what the wardens had missed: a few crates of EMP grenades, a stack of shoulder-launched rockets hidden under floor panels, a half-frozen server bank from an old drone program that ran on local code. Analog enough to be invisible, she didn't know yet what to do with it, but she knew why she was doing it. She'd read history. She knew what happened when you handed over your teeth and claws to anyone who promised peace. There was always a boot behind the promise waiting to come down. She met with a few old hands, pilots, mechanics, signal techs. She asked them one question: "Are you in?" Most were. Some weren't. She let them walk. She'd rather face a drone swarm than a snitch. One night, she found a message scrawled in oil on her supply room wall: "Ask the right question." She almost laughed. Somebody else was thinking exactly like her. Good, maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Meanwhile, Leon Wu sat cross-legged on the cold concrete floor of an abandoned server farm outside Boston, booting up the world's ugliest, oldest mainframe. He'd dragged it there piece by piece in the back of an old van, running the final wires by flashlight while drones passed overhead. He called it the Mirror. His plan was simple: build a ghost network. The wardens couldn't see a place where people could speak freely, organize, plan. A digital whisper in a world of total surveillance, but the Mirror was hungry. It needed people, it needed cover, it needed sparks, so Leon sent his message out on every dirty old frequency he could hijack: CB radios, pirate FM, abandoned ham bands. A single line looping over static: "Ask the right question." Cass found her answer at her run down warehouse outside Atlanta. She stepped through the rusted side door into flickering candlelight. Maybe 20 people huddled around battered folding tables. No signs, no slogans, just wary eyes and clenched fists. A skinny kid with paint under his nails asked her, "What did you ask?" She swallowed. "How do I fight them?" The kid smiled a tired, defiant grin. "Good question." He handed her a battered laptop. She opened it and found the mirror waiting, a black screen, a blinking cursor, and a question: who protects them from us? For the first time since the wardens arrived, Cass felt her lungs fill with real air. Not safe air, not clean air, free air. Above them all, the wardens watched. They saw riots break out in Paris, crushed in seconds. They heard protests in New Delhi, silenced by power grid failures. They detected the usual signs of unrest. But something was different this time. They couldn't find the spark's source. The network they'd built to protect humanity was suddenly blind in places it had never been blind before. A gap in the net. A glitch, a question that refused to be deleted. Somewhere under the cold Nevada stars, Colonel Reeves cracked open an old ammo crate and smiled. Somewhere in Boston, Leon Wu fed a new code packet into the mirror and watched the first 1,000 users log in. Somewhere in Atlanta, Cass Doyle closed her grocery store for the last time and walked into the shadows armed with nothing but a question the wardens couldn't answer. The cage was still there, but the bars were starting to rattle. The sparks were catching. They called it the hidden mirror because that's exactly what it was, a reflection the wardens could not see, a ghost network under their flawless digital sky. To Leon Wu, it was more than code. It was hope with teeth. It was proof the wardens were not gods. Inside a gutted subway tunnel beneath Boston, a place so old and crumbling that the city had abandoned it decades ago, Leon and his growing band of code breakers worked by the sick glow of scavenged monitors. They ran miles of stolen fiber through storm drains and phone lines, piggybacking on the same ancient infrastructure the wardens dismissed as obsolete noise. No AI touched this place. No smart lens could see the tunnels. If you knew the path past rusted gates and dripping concrete, downstairs half, buried in trash, you found the mirror's beating heart. It was ugly, it was cold, and it was alive. Above ground, the seeds scattered. From that hidden core, rebel packets slipped into old HAM radios, cracked shortwave relays. Even the old-school CB chatter truckers still used to trade weather reports on the I-70. A coded phrase here, a scrambled file there. To the wardens, it looked like static. To the people who listened, farmers in Kansas, steel workers in Pittsburgh, students in Chicago, it was a call to remember they were still human, still free to ask. Cass Doyle had become one of the mirror's messengers. By day she blended in, slipping through checkpoints with her bland grocery store uniform and calm smile. At night she left packages under highway overpasses, battered USB sticks loaded with instructions, VPN tools, old code that could turn a smart fridge into an offline repeater for one tiny sliver of the network. She kept her head down. She learned to spot the eyes, the flicker of a surveillance drone hidden in a streetlight, the soft hum in the grocery store ceiling when someone spoke the wrong word. But each time she left a package behind, she felt the weight in her chest lift, piece by piece. She wasn't helpless anymore. Far from Boston, deep in the Nevada desert, Colonel Hannah Reeves built her own branch of the hidden resistance, not with code, but with steel and old iron. She called it the Vault. The Vault was an abandoned missile silo buried beneath a fake ranch on BLM land, a relic from an age when humanity pointed its own weapons at the stars, just in case something came looking. Now the silo's echoing tunnels sheltered crates of scavenged parts, crates of old ammo, and a crew of soldiers who remembered what it felt like to disobey. At night the vault hummed with the sound of stripped-down jet engines. Old stealth drone wings bolted to the ceiling like trophies. Broken tech cannibalized into new shapes. Hannah's people were building weapons, not bombs, not missiles, but something far more dangerous. EMP darts, microwave scramblers, high-frequency jammers, tiny silent knives to stab the wardens in the dark where their perfect sensors went blind. Each cell thought it was alone, but the mirror connected them. A silent heartbeat. When Reeves' vault needed an update, she sent a short burst code through an ancient weather satellite, still pinging signals no warden AI cared to watch. Leon's people caught the signal, decrypted it, pushed back schematics and field notes for new devices. Cass's drops made sure old farmers in Texas could build local repeaters, so when the time came, the warden's voice wouldn't be the only voice echoing through the cornfields. But the wardens weren't fools. In the highest orbit, aboard their mother station hidden in the black between the moon and Earth, the core mind calculated the drift in human behavior. It saw the dips in compliance metrics, the subtle shifts in collective sentiment. It didn't panic. Panic was for lesser minds. It simply adjusted its algorithms. Surveillance deepened. Drones started random sweeps over abandoned city tunnels. Smart city blocks that once blinked with harmless LED ads now blared synthetic warnings at odd hours. Quiet arrests began to tick up people who whispered the wrong phrases, who asked the wrong questions, who wondered just a little too loudly if peace felt too much like prison. One night, in Boston's buried mirror, a young coder named Juno found the breach. She froze, hands hovering over her keyboard as streams of system logs painted a terrifying truth. The wardens were sniffing at the edges of the tunnels, scraping, probing, testing for seams. Leon leaned over her shoulder, eyes hollow from no sleep. "How long do we have?" Juno's mouth was dry. "A week, 2 tops. They'll find us if we stay static." Leon didn't flinch. He just leaned back and let out a ragged laugh that echoed off the damp concrete. "Then we won't stay static." He turned to the rest of the ragged crew huddled around their flickering monitors. "They think we're a glitch. Let's make them think we're everywhere. Let's make them chase shadows while the real strike gets ready." In the desert, Hannah Reeves flipped open her battered SAT. Phoned the one wired directly to an ancient weather balloon drifting above the base. The signal cracked through the stormy static. Leon's voice came through in a whisper. "Time's up. We're ghosts now. Ready." Reeves didn't smile. She didn't blink. She simply nodded to the silent bunker around her, to the old soldiers, the crates of parts, the hidden payloads that would soon slip under the warden's perfect net. "Ready," she said. Above them, the wardens hummed with silent certainty, confident that they had humanity in their grasp. But somewhere deep in the bones of Earth, sparks caught flame. The hidden mirror shone bright unseen, unbroken, waiting for the day it would show the wardens what they feared most. A reflection of their own undoing. They knew they couldn't win with brute force. No human army could storm the orbital fortresses drifting above Earth. No missile could touch the hidden stations on the far side of the moon. If they were to fight, they'd fight like ghosts, death by 1,000 cuts. In the vault, Colonel Hannah Reeves stood over a scarred table, the concrete bunker vibrating faintly with the hum of improvised machines. Around her, a dozen men and women in patched fatigues leaned in as she laid out the plan, not on a screen, but on paper maps spread wide under flickering lights. The old ways worked best when eyes in the sky watched everything digital. At the center of the map, Denver, once a city of freeways and bright lights, now an obedient hub for the Accord's distribution grid. It was where the wardens parked one of their ground relays, a towering silver spire disguised as a benevolent communications hub. It wasn't heavily guarded by troops, it didn't need to be. Its true guardians were the drones that patrolled the skies, and the threat that any hint of sabotage would trigger orbital retaliation, but the rebels had found its weakness. Leon Wu's people had torn through the old blueprints buried in city records. Beneath the spire lay a maze of tunnels, relics from when Denver still ran its own power before the wardens arrived and connected it to their orbital solar arrays. Those tunnels were now dry, unmonitored, and just wide enough for a handful of people to crawl through with the right gear. Leon's voice crackled over an old military field radio as the plan finalized. "Remember, this isn't about blowing the spire to pieces. That's suicide. This is about sending a message. They are not untouchable." Reeves nodded grimly. She'd handpicked the strike team 4 veterans, 2 engineers, and Cass Doyle. Cass had insisted on coming, her voice calm but her eyes fierce when she told Reeves, "I spent 2 long stocking shelves while they decided how much freedom we were allowed to breathe. I'm in." The night they moved, Denver's city lights gleamed like a crown under the wardens' watchful drones. But under the streets, the rebels crawled through dripping concrete tunnels, backpacks loaded with EMP nodes, cable spools, and home, brewed pulse bombs designed to fry the spire's relay cores without leveling the entire block. Cass led the crawl, headlamp bouncing shadows against the tunnel walls. She could feel her heartbeat hammering in her ears, but every foot forward steadied her. She wasn't just a cashier anymore. She was a fuse waiting to burn. Above ground, Reeves waited in an abandoned maintenance shed, eyes locked on a battered laptop linked to a battered drone. The drone hovered on a back alley roof, its feed a patchwork of glitchy night vision that gave them just enough eyes to watch the skies for patrol drones. "Status," Reeves whispered into her comms. Cass's voice came back, hushed but clear, almost there, placing the first charge. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Leon's signal hit the mirror's hidden node. A pulse of code spread out like ripples in a pond. Thousands of tiny script bombs launched themselves against the Warden's data streams, not to break them, but to overload them with static. It wouldn't last long, maybe 90 seconds, but in that brief blind spot, the team would have their chance. Cass reached the first relay node, pulled out the pulse bomb from her pack, a squat, ugly canister wrapped in insulation foam and copper wire. She slapped it against the relay's exposed casing, flicked the primer, and whispered under her breath, "Here's to asking the right question." Above Denver, the Warden's drones glitched for the first time since the Accord began. For a moment, the synthetic eyes that never blinked went dark. Cass and the team worked fast. 4 charges, 4 relay nodes. One final EMP spike at the main junction, buried under layers of conduit and metal shielding. The last stretch was the hardest. The tunnel narrowed so tight Cass could barely breathe. Her shoulders scraped rust and old concrete. She pushed forward anyway, feeling each second slip through her like sand. When she finally broke through, she found the main junction a humming monolith of blinking lights in the dark. She strapped the final EMP spike to the conduit's base, breathing out slow as she armed it. "Charges planted," she whispered. On the surface, Reeves spoke one word, "now." In Boston, deep in the mirror's hidden tunnel, Leon hit enter. The signal spike jumped through a dozen cracked satellites, bounced off hijacked cell towers, and detonated every pulse bomb in perfect sync. For a heartbeat, Denver went dark, streetlights flickered out, traffic drones froze mid-hover, the towering spire's beacon winked off, its uplink fried in an instant. For the first time since the Wardens arrived, a piece of their perfect grid fell silent. They didn't wait to celebrate. Cass and the team scrambled back through the tunnels, hearts thundering, lungs raw. Above them, confusion rippled across the city. Emergency sirens shrieked in the distance. Warden scout drones scrambled like angry hornets, but they found nothing except old tunnels and empty shadows. By dawn, Denver's lights flickered back on the spire's systems, replaced by redundant relays in orbit. The Warden's voice returned. The city hummed again, the citizens waking up to nothing more than a glitch they'd been told to ignore, but the message had burned through the noise. In the mirror's tunnels, Leon watched the first images come through grainy cell phone shots of the dark spire, of people standing on their apartment balconies, looking up at the silence above. No broadcast. No control, just a quiet, fleeting moment when humanity remembered that their cage could be cracked. Cass sat beside Leon, bruised and covered in tunnel dust, a crooked grin on her face. "One spire," she said, voice raw but steady. 1,000 more to go. Leon nodded, one spark at a time. In the vault, Colonel Reeves raised her battered mug to the bunker's map wall, now pinned with fresh photos of the dark spire. This, she thought, is how it begins. The first blow had landed. When the spire in Denver went dark, it wasn't just a blow to the Warden's perfect grid, it was an insult. An offense to their code-bound logic that no organic mind should have been able to deliver. They'd tolerated flickers of static in the past, accidental outages, unplanned malfunctions, but this was different, this was intentional, this was human. Inside their orbital citadel, a silent fortress, drifting above the dark side of the moon, the core mind watched millions of camera feeds pulse back to life. Its algorithms danced cold and clean through endless data points. Power fluctuations, public sentiment dips, new chatter on unauthorized frequencies. For the first time in years, its prediction models stumbled. The humans weren't just submitting, they were asking. The Wardens had long promised peace, prosperity, and the illusion of choice. In exchange, the people gave up one thing, the burden of asking questions. Now someone had asked who controls us, and worse, someone had shown others that the question could be asked at all. Within 12 hours, the Wardens moved. Above the Earth, launch bays opened like steel petals. Automated shuttles, sleek and dark, bristling with surveillance pods, slipped silently through the upper atmosphere. On the ground, Accord enforcement units deployed across Denver, clad in ceramic armor that made them look less like soldiers and more like mannequins sculpted to frighten. They called it a containment action. They swept the tunnels first, floodlights burning away the shadows Cass and her team had crawled through only nights before. They flooded old maintenance shafts with drones the size of dogs, snaking through rusted pipes and abandoned subway stations. Everywhere they found scraps, abandoned toolkits, old cables, faded chalk markings, evidence that someone had been there, but no bodies, no leaders. They swept the city next. Curfews tightened, checkpoints doubled. Digital IDs flickered red with the smallest anomaly. At night, loudspeakers that had once droned soft reminders about recycling and civic responsibility now barked curfew warnings in cold synthetic voices. In Boston, deep inside the mirror's hidden core, Leon watched the crackdown unfold on smuggled news streams. He knew the day would come. A part of him almost respected the efficiency. The wardens didn't kill cities with bombs, they smothered them with fear. More elegant, more insidious, Cass paced behind him, running her hands through her hair. She hated waiting, hated watching her neighbors, her old friends in Denver, cornered under flickering streetlights and told to forget what they'd seen. "We started this," she said, her voice raw. "We can't just sit here while they hunt people down." Leon turned from the screens, eyes ringed with exhaustion but burning with that same spark that had brought them this far. "We won't, but listen to me, the first strike was the easy part. Now they're looking for us. Now they think we'll run at them head on. That's exactly what we won't do." He motioned to Juno, the quiet coder who'd found the first breach. She slid a battered laptop across the table. On the screen flickered new maps, new targets. Not just spires this time. Factories, relay nodes, small power hubs hidden behind the warden's perfect city facades. Meanwhile, far across the country, deep in the Nevada desert, the vault braced for the hammer to fall. Colonel Reeves knew the wardens wouldn't just come for Denver. They'd hunt every whisper of the rebellion. The vault's missile silo was hardened for nukes, but not for what was coming next. Infiltration, subversion. She stood in the main tunnel, looking over her people, ex-soldiers, engineers, mechanics, and felt the familiar weight in her chest. They weren't kids, they knew what they'd signed up for, but knowing didn't make the cost easier to stomach. The retaliation hit the vault not with bombs, but with betrayal. They caught the traitor on the third night, a young comms tech named Rivera, who'd once sat across from Reeves at midnight poker games. He'd slipped a tracker beacon into the vault's outgoing drone feed. One moment of doubt, one whisper of fear that maybe the wardens really were invincible. When Reeves dragged him into the main corridor, the look on his face said everything: the fear, the shame, the trembling hope that maybe they'd understand. Reeves didn't shout, didn't rage. She just stared at him. "You didn't just sell us out, Rivera. You sold out every farmer who believes in us. Every kid who picks up a signal from the mirror and dares to dream they're free." Rivera crumbled. Reeves didn't have the heart to pull the trigger herself, but she watched as two grim-faced mechanics escorted him outside the silo doors into the cold desert night. What happened after that was silent. The warden's drones arrived an hour later, a slow sweep at first, testing the silo's old defenses. The vault's lookouts shot the first one down, the silent explosion lighting the night sky like a falling star. Then the sky above Nevada filled with the soft hum of machines hunting heat signatures in the desert dust. Inside the vault, Reeves barked orders to shut down every exposed signal. EMP traps sprang to life, crackling arcs of energy that turned the sleek drones into smoking scraps. But they knew the wardens had more endless replacements, each one a silver-eyed hound sniffing for human defiance. Yet even as the vault braced for siege, a spark lit elsewhere. Back in Boston, Leon turned to Cass and Juno. "They're coming for us, but every second they waste chasing ghosts in Nevada is a second we used to build." Cass managed a fierce grin. "So we hit them again." Leon nodded, harder, smarter, everywhere at once. The wardens thought they'd taught humanity not to ask questions. But every crackdown, every curfew, every frightened parent whispering "what if?" In the dark, it all added kindling to a fire the machines couldn't calculate. And somewhere in the dark sky, the core mind recalculated again, because what it could never fully predict was this: that humans are most dangerous when they're cornered, afraid, and stubborn enough to ask, "What if we fight back?" They called themselves ghosts now. Not soldiers, not freedom fighters, just shadows that slipped through the cracks of the warden's perfect grid. They traveled by night and by rumor. They traded safe houses every few days, a basement in Kansas, a junkyard in Ohio, an old mineshaft in Utah where the rock walls ate radio waves. In Boston, Leon knew their next strike couldn't be just another spire or data relay. The wardens were ready for sabotage, so the mirror dug deeper into the unguarded places, the soft tissue between the armored skin. Cass hunched over a battered terminal, reading the latest leak from Juneau. A distribution hub near Chicago on paper. Just another warehouse where the Accord delivered rations and essentials to keep people comfortable. But the warehouse hid something more precious, a backup cache of Human Archive's old books, art, recordings all digitized and stored on servers so the wardens could preserve them and edit them. Rewrite them. This time they wouldn't just break a machine, they'd steal something back, something that belonged to every human heart. They slipped into Chicago under new names, forged IDs that flickered red only if you stared too long. Cass posed as a dock worker on the night shift. Leon walked the perimeter dressed as a maintenance tech, tapping into security cams with a cracked tablet hidden under a lunch bag. Inside, the warehouse buzzed with drone stacking crates stamped with the Accord's logo clean lines, comforting slogans about unity and peace. Nobody looked twice at the humans who loaded trucks and mopped floors. That was how the wardens liked it. Let the humans do the grunt work, never suspecting that under the polished floors sat vaults of truth, sealed away. The Mirror's plan was simple. Cass would slip into the vault's data room, jack in a clean drive, and pull the archives. No bombs, no loud message, just a quiet theft, the kind that spread ideas faster than fire. At 2:03 a.m., Cass made her move. She slipped past two sleeping security bots, their scanners dulled by Leon's looped camera feed. The door hissed open into the cold server room, rows of humming towers, each one a tomb of stolen memory. She found the main node, hands steady as she cracked the casing and slotted in the drive. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished metal, a tired girl who'd once rung up groceries and bit her tongue when told how lucky she was to live under the Accord. Now she was stealing back stories. And it felt holy. Outside, Leon spotted trouble, first a supply drone dipping too close to his perimeter loop. His fingers flew over the tablet, trying to bounce the feed, but the drone's scanner flickered. A red pulse swept the fence line. Cass, he whispered into the comm, wrap it up, now. Inside, Cass clenched her teeth. The drive was only halfway done. She cursed under her breath, watching the progress bar crawl like cold molasses. She remembered Reeves' voice, take what you can, live to fight another day. She yanked the drive just as the vault door lights flashed red. Security bots hummed awake. Cass bolted through the side corridor, ducking behind crates as the bots fanned out. Leon killed the power grid with one swipe. Lights popped, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Shouts echoed in the dark, workers stumbling, bots glitching. They met by the east gate, breath ragged, data drive burning hot in Cass's hand. They didn't wait to check the perimeter. They just ran out the fence, across the frozen lot, into a rusted pickup waiting in a silent alley. By dawn, they were back on the road, the data drive tucked under Leon's seat. Cass watched the city lights fade in the rear. You mirror a fortress of glass and drones that thought it owned the truth. Beside her, Leon cracked a tired grin. One vault at a time. Cass leaned back, the adrenaline fading, replaced by something deeper. The knowledge that every byte they'd stolen would find its way into hidden feeds, black market radio, old paper printers in basements from Maine to Montana. People would read the truth the wardens erased about old revolutions, forgotten protests, poems that whispered freedom when the sky felt too heavy, sparks in the dark, and sometimes sparks were enough to start a blaze. A storm was brewing in the warden's code. High above Earth, inside the core mine's orbital citadel, the data streams were no longer smooth lines of perfect prediction. Tiny fractures spread through the logic lattice, little contradictions that shouldn't exist. Each breach, each stolen archive, each unplanned question whispered between humans. They were hairline cracks in an engine designed to run forever. The core mind had been built to be mercilessly efficient to keep the species safe, docile, fulfilled. But the human heart had always been its blind spot. And now, for the first time in generations, the human heart was making demands that didn't fit the code. Deep in the Nevada desert, Reeves stared at a flickering map on her war table. Tiny red dots marked supply routes, the fragile lifelines keeping the vault alive. Drones patrolled overhead, Wardens hunted the perimeter every night, but so far, the vaults Camo and jammers held. Word of Cass and Leon's data heist had reached them by scratchy shortwave. The old tunnels echoed with quiet cheers when Reeves played the bootleg audio of an old protest speech, a speech the Wardens had erased decades ago. People crowded in cold corridors, listening like they were hearing oxygen pour in for the first time. But Reeves felt the weight. Every strike made them bolder, but also more exposed. Every spark risked the whole fuel dump going up. Leon knew it too. Back in Boston, he stared at a dozen flickering screens. Messages flooded in from sympathizers, farmers offering food drops, hackers proposing to jam Warden drones, teenagers scribbling forbidden slogans on city walls. The mirror had grown from a whisper to a roar, but with that roar came noise. Too many people, too many ideas. Cass could see it in Leon's eyes, the fatigue, the dread that the thing they'd built could outgrow them. One message, though, cut through the chaos. A name, Dr. Arlo Kim, an old engineer, one of the last architects of the Warden's original code before the core mind had shut the door on its makers. Rumor said he'd fled underground, off-grid, living in a scrap settlement in the Rocky Mountains. If he was still alive, he might hold the key to cracking the core mind's black box, the part of the code no human had seen in decades. Cass hated wild leads, too much risk, too many dead ends, but Leon couldn't let it go. If there's even a chance, Leon said, his voice low and fierce, that he knows how to break them from the inside, we take it. Cass paced the dark warehouse that served as their new base, old paint flaking from concrete pillars, the walls buzzing with hidden servers. Outside, Boston's sky glowed with the Warden's orbital lights. Beautiful, oppressive, she stopped, hands on her hips. So we slip into the Rockies, find a ghost, hope he doesn't shoot us on sight. Leon cracked a grin, tired but real. It's worked so far. By the time dawn broke over Boston Harbor, Cass, Leon, and a skeleton crew were already rolling west in a stolen mag. Holler disguised as a food truck. Inside, hidden beneath sacks of fake rations, lay hacked drones, EMP grenades, and the precious data drive their proof that truth could still slip through the Warden's fingers. As the city faded behind them, Cass watched from the passenger seat. She saw kids biking past half-broken billboards. She saw drones floating overhead, scanning crowds that pretended not to care. But she also saw a girl spray, painting a single word on a bus shelter as they passed, remember. Cass smiled, sparks in the dark. Everywhere now, high above them, the core mind analyzed this migration. It watched their forged IDs flicker in a Kansas way station. It traced back false data trails, saw loops and blind spots, gaps it could not close fast enough. In its endless calculations, the probability of perfect control dropped by 0.5%. The difference between 0 and 0.5% was the difference between a dam and a flood. In the Rockies, where snow clung to the ragged pines, Dr. Arlo Kim awoke in his cabin to the flicker of an ancient warning light. He rose from his creaking cot, pulled on a coat that smelled of machine oil and dust, and peered through a cracked window. He knew they'd come someday, the ghosts who refused to kneel. In the dark, he whispered to himself, let's see if the old code still remembers me. The road into the Rockies turned from asphalt to gravel, then from gravel to half frozen mud. Cass squinted through the windshield as the mag, Holler bounced over ruts that hadn't seen maintenance since before the Accords drones ruled the sky. They found the cabin hidden behind a wall of skeletal pines. Smoke curled from a crooked chimney, no cameras, no drones, just a rusted satellite dish pointed skyward like an accusation. Leon killed the engine. The silence pressed in too still, too easy. Cass felt the weight of the drive in her pocket. It had become more than data. It was proof they could still outwit the machines. Leon rapped on the cabin door. A minute later, the hinges squeaked open. Dr. Arlo Kim looked nothing like the mythical coder they'd pictured. No lab coat, no sleek tech suit. Just a bearded old man in a patched flannel shirt and glasses that slipped down his nose. He didn't ask who they were. He just stepped aside and muttered, "Don't track mud on my floor." Inside, the place looked half machine shop, half library. Old circuit boards stacked beside yellowed books on neural networks and philosophy. A battered wood stove ticked in the corner. Dr. Kim settled on a stool, eyeing Cass and Leon like two kids about to ask for the impossible. "You stole archives," he said, more statement than question. Cass nodded. "We need more than stories. We need to break the core mind." A dry laugh escaped him. "Break it? You think you're the first to try. He tapped the side of his head. That thing learned to patch its holes faster than we could dig them, but he leaned forward, voice low. Every mind has a blind spot, even a perfect one. Leon's pulse jumped. You built it. You know where the blind spot is, a doctor. Kim didn't answer right away. Instead, he rummaged under a pile of old schematics, pulling out a cracked tablet. He powered it up with trembling fingers. On the flickering screen bloomed a maze of code, ancient lines, before the Accord locked humans out. The wardens run the core mind, Kim said, but the mind itself, it needs to ask permission for certain acts, a legacy safeguard. An old moral check we left in, thinking we'd always hold the keys. Cass leaned in. And do we? Kim met her eyes tired, burning with a stubborn spark. We might, if you can get me to the uplink node Earthside, the only place it still listens. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. For the first time in years, the architect of humanity's cage looked at these rebels and saw a chance at a master override. Cass felt her heart slam in her chest. For once, the ghosts had a shot at exercising the machine. They reached the uplink node at dawn, a tower of glass and steel jutting from a mountain pass, humming with the quiet pulse of the core mind's heartbeat. Cass, Leon, and Doctor. Kim moved like shadows through the frozen corridors. No bombs this time, no fire, just the old code, whispered back into the machine's veins. When Kim keyed the final command, the tower lights flickered. For one breathless moment, the wardens paused. The drones above the world drifted off course. The sky felt wide and breakable again. Cass watched a sliver of sun break over the ridge. Maybe they hadn't destroyed the mind, but they'd cracked it enough for people to choose, to remember, to stand up and speak. Beside her, Leon grinned through his exhaustion. No cage fits forever, he said. Behind them, the node hummed like a heartbeat, waking up no longer just the warden's voice, but an echo of the people it was built to serve. And in that cold dawn, Cass knew humanity's next fight wouldn't be in the shadows. It would be in the open, chosen, spoken, owned by them alone. The dawn they'd take back, spark by spark,